Race 'em in the sand, buck 'em in the mud, drip a cowboy's sweat, bleed a cowboy's blood.
Yeah.
I'm Zeke Thurston, 2016 World Champion Soundbrock Rider, and you're watching The Peppered Stewart Show.
All right, look at that. We're here. We're here again. For you, we got stuff going on. Stuff is happening. Rodeo is always happening. When you're on here, we're always talking about stuff. There's always something going on. There's rodeo going on. There's kids going on. We told you last week about something. I don't remember what it was. Kids are crazy. I don't know what their problem is. They're experts at everything. Of course, I was a kid once, and I was pretty much an expert at everything too. So, that's kind of how it goes. So I won't get too much into that today because we got into it last week, and stuff happens, things go. But with that, we did tell you stuff's happening. We may have some stories. We don't know what all we're going to get to. We may get into a few stories about some stuff. We got some beef stories here. We've got plenty of craziness in the odd news, and then we will end it with a new movie trailer for you guys. But rodeo's going on. Rodeo's happening, and we did tell you that we were going to have a special guest in studio this episode. We did tell you that. But did you also forget that it was April? Have you ever heard of something called April Fools? Well, that's not what we're doing. We're not doing that. Look right there. You got Tex here, and right there beside Tex, you got the man, the myth, the legend himself, Mr. Tuff Hedeman right there. So what is going on today? So what we're going to do, we're going to talk about stuff. We're going to get into some bull riding, talk about that, and then we're going to talk a lot about Fort Worth, Texas, because you got the best event every year in Fort Worth called the Tuff Hedeman Bull Riding, and that's what's going on Saturday night right there in Cowtown. So that's where you want to be. And with that, let's go to Tuff. You want to tell us about that event?
Yes, sir. It's I believe it's the 26th year.
Yeah.
And after I was riding professionally for about 10 years, I had an injury in Las Vegas, and I hit the ground at the NFR, and I was paralyzed for about 20 minutes, and I'm laying there thinking, at some point in time, I'm probably going to have to get a real job. And so, bull riding is a sport, or was when I was competing. That's what retirement meant. It didn't mean retirement like most people see retirement. And,
right.
Major sports. I know, a lot of ball players that, made millions of dollars, and so when they retire, they retire and do whatever they want. But when you ride bulls for a living and you retire, that means you have the opportunity to get a real job. And so I actually started producing events when I was, I was competing, and the first one was in Fort Worth. It was in 1993. It was actually a week after the NFR where I was injured, and I was actually scheduled to ride, but I had neck surgery in Vegas, and I flew back to Fort Worth and had a bull riding the next week, and been doing it ever since. And I've done them for, like I said, 26 years, and time flies when you're having fun, I guess.
It does, and it's a great event. We've been to a few of them there in Fort Worth, and thinking back in '93, back in those times, in Fort Worth, that was one of the first big bull rides to go on.
Yeah, it really was. If you really look back at the history of bull riding, it's always been part of rodeo. I think probably the first standalone event which kind of does what we do now, and that's feature the best guys, the top guys, and top bulls, was in Del Rio, Texas. It's called the George Paul Memorial. They also called it Super Bowl, and it started in the early '80s. It's still happening, and that was really where standalone bull riding really kind of began, is where it headed. And after that, actually in the late '80s, in 1989, Lane Frost and Ed Gaylord at the Lazy E Arena got together and had an event they called Bullmania. The first year they called it Bullmania, and it was a tribute to Freckles Brown. And Lane was the bull rider, the contestant representative. That his job to make sure he invited the good guys and made sure that they had good bulls, and they put up a lot of money, and they put it on television. Gaylord, they own the Lazy. They also own TNN, the Nashville Network, and they put it on television, and that was in 1989. And if you really look at it, that's kind of what they started in is really what we followed, really since then.
Yeah.
We started the PBR in the early '90s, and some people don't have a real clear memory about what is and what isn't, but the reality is that we just modeled what Lane and kind of a spin off of what they did at Del Rio with the George Paul, Bobby Paul, George's brother, and John Ludlam, and then kind of expanded it with Lane and Mr. Gaylord. And actually, Lane was killed later that year in '89, and Mr. Gaylord called me and asked me if I would replace him as a contestant director, and I could never even come in the vicinity of replacing him, but I did take on the same role, the same responsibilities he did, and making sure we invited all the quote best guys, and
Right.
What our opinion of who the best guys were, we just kind of went the standings of the PRCA, because in our opinion that was the highest level of rodeo. And now I realize, and looking back, just because you're in the standings in the PRCA or some other organization didn't mean you were better than this guy from that association or this guy. And I think we all tend to be a little arrogant and a little egotistical in terms of we're the best, and we're the best, and you get into different leagues, different tours, and but that's kind of where it started. And when we started the PBR in the early '90s, the Fort Worth event, that was actually wind up being the kind of the first finals of the PBR, and it took off from there. And for the first 13 years of the Tuff Hedeman bull riding there, it was a PBR. It was a PBR sanctioned event as part of the Bud Light Cup Series, and then the following year it was a PRCA/CBR sanctioned event, and then the year after that it was a CBR sanctioned event, and this year for the first time it doesn't have a sanctioning body, so I don't have any initials or letters to go in front of to say this or that, but what it is it's the same premise. It's the same thing that Lane Frost and Ed Gaylord started in 1989 in Guthrie, Oklahoma, and me inviting the best guys I thought think that are available, that want to come ride, and great bulls, and it's a good time. I think the one thing, what you have to learn early on in producing events is you really have to kind of be everything to everybody, and you have to put yourself in the shoes and the position of everybody.
for me, it's pretty easy when it comes to the bull riders. That I know what bull riders want. They want to get on great bulls. They just want a chance to be competitive. They want to get on great bulls and they want to ride for a lot of money. But then you also have to turn around and put yourself in the stands as a fan. What would you like to see? What you don't like to see? And so you look at that from that way. If you're a contractor, what do you want to see? In terms of bringing your animals, your bulls to it. But where it really starts with the riders for me, because I was one. But you just have to treat everybody, with the same amount of respect that you want. Mm-hmm. And as long as you do that, you really can be successful by. It's very difficult to be everything to everybody, but when it comes to producing events, you really can. You can make an event that's good for the guys to ride, have a chance to get on good bulls, win a lot of money. Something that the fans want to see. Mm-hmm. The fans want to see something cool, something exciting. If it's bull riding, they want to see them make the whistle and be 90 points. Yep. It's not bull bucking off. In this day and age, the bulls are, crazy in terms of how hard they buck and how difficult they are to ride. And, what a lot of people don't understand, the scoring system, it's based 1 to 25 on the animal, 1 to 25 on the ride. To judge, you add them up, and it's a possible 100 points. And, you can use 4 judges. You can throw out the high and the low. You can add them all together and divide them however. But it's a 100-point system. And but at the end of the day, people, if you've never been to a bull ride and you've never been to a rodeo, it's exciting to watch somebody ride a great bull and get a high score. What isn't exciting is for you to buck 50 bulls and have 50 no scores. Yeah. So when it comes to producing an event, you want bulls in that they're getting on that they can ride and they are rideable, and people, a lot of people don't understand that there's bulls that judges will mark 22, 21, 22, 23, and even 24 that are rideable, and they're bulls that they'll mark those same numbers that aren't near as rideable. And at the end of the day, to be competitive and to ride at the highest level, you have to be able to ride both of them. And the guys that can ride both types, consistently, mm-hmm. It's really not going to change the outcome over a series of events over a period of time. The guys that ride the best are going to win, more consistently. And, what's interesting now, we have competition amongst the bulls. So, I invite, say at Fort Worth this week, I'll invite 15 different teams, and a team might be one guy, or it might be a group of guys. It might be we have husband and wife. We've got brothers. We've got single guys that, they enter a team, and they bring 3 bulls, and their first 2 bulls will be buck in the first round. So we've got 15 teams, got 2 bulls, you got 30 bulls. Well, we invite, at this event, I'll invite 30 guys. Usually we do 12 to 15 teams. So based on that number, that's how many riders we'll invite. So we're going to have 30 guys. Each guys will compete once, and then they advance to the semifinals, which is the top 15. And so that means that's the third bull of the team. So they add all the scores up, and no different than the riders, they compete. And if their bulls have the highest combined score, they pay a big entry fee. It's $5,000 each. And so you got 15 teams at 5,000. That's a lot of money. And it makes it fun, and it also brings, it gets people involved and interested that wouldn't normally have an opportunity to be involved, or to be able to bring their bulls to an event like this where you'll get top ranked caliber guys on them. So that's pretty fun and pretty cool. And so after the first 2 rounds, you go 30 to 15. The top 4 riders after 2 rounds, they advance to what we call the Final 4 shootout, and they start at nothing. And I pick 4 great bulls, and whoever's first, they get to pick out of the 4 bulls which one they want to ride. And but there's only 4, and so typically what the fans will see is they'll see the best guys. They'll get to see them ride, whoever's going to be in the top 4 that night. They're going to, see them 3 times. So if you get, say Trey Benton, who last year at the national finals really, I thought he was the star of the NFR in the bull riding last year, just because he was riding so great. And that's not to say, anything negative about Sage Kimsey, because Sage Kimsey's doing things that nobody's ever done, and what he's accomplished thus far in his career is unbelievable. And he's kind of reminds me of what Pete Gay said one time about Jim Sharp. He said watching Jim Sharp ride bulls is just boring. He said he makes it look so easy. He makes it look so common that it's just boring. Well, that's what Sage Kimsey does. He just does everything so fundamentally correct that he makes a bull look like he's much easier than he is. And that's why he's just so good. Jim was the same way. Just make like the bull of the year, make him look just like a nice spinner, and people say, "Oh, well, that bull didn't have his day. Just wasn't. He was just nice with him." And that's what happens when you ride correctly and you make it look easier than it always did. But back to say like Trey, I mean, he was just, he for the first time, I think he was finally healthy going into the NFR, and you could just see him riding with confidence, and rode great, and he's carried that on through this, through the start of the year. And so he'll be in Fort Worth, and the only thing better than seeing him ride once is seeing him ride 3 times. And in order for him to win, the biggest part of the purse, is paid out in the top 4, and so that's exciting. And it's not while I'll tape it, and it will be televised, but I think when you go to, whether that's a rodeo or I went to the Dallas Mavericks game the other day, when you're there as part of the live audience and it's a television event, everything is, they cater to television. And what that means, the live experience is a lot of times you're sitting around waiting for TV timeouts, and to me, that you add an hour to the hour and a half to the performance, then you penalize the people that are watching it live, in my opinion. So I'm a live event guy. I'm a live event producer. I know television's great. It exposes you to people that might not have ever seen it, but the guy that spends his hard-earned money to buy a ticket, I think he's the most important guy to me.
Right.
And I want to make sure he has a good time and he enjoys himself. And I don't think sitting through something for 3.5 hours, waiting for pauses, waiting for a television timeout or this or that, to listen to a barrel man or a clown tell a joke that we've heard before. I don't believe that should be 50% of the show or the experience. So, what I do is it's a fast-paced, fun, entertaining, experience. We introduce everybody at the beginning. We always use some fun music and pyro and lights just to kind of wake everybody up. And, again, it's part of, entertaining, and some people will say, well, is bull riding, is it a sport or is it a show, or, it really, if you're going to be successful and appeal to more than just your diehard fans, it has to be, a show, and it has to be entertaining, or people aren't going to watch. So, it's my job to make sure if somebody comes to the event and they've never seen a rodeo, they have no idea what bull riding is. They don't know that before they get there that they have to ride 8 seconds for a score. They have to ride one-handed. But you can explain that really quickly, and they can enjoy it. But if you're a diehard, Trey Benton, Sage Kimsey, all the top guys that are in the sport, the bulls, this, that, and the other. I think it's enjoyable for you as well, because it's a very fast pace. We don't drag it out, and it's about a 2-hour show, 2-hour event. As soon as it's over, we write these guys a check, and they all come out and sign autographs, take pictures with the fans, and that's something that we started at the beginning, because that's something you don't get at very many sports.
Yeah.
And what I know, 100%, if it wasn't for the people in the stands that bought a ticket, that took time out of their life to spend their hard-earned money to watch me ride, or to watch an event that I produce, if it wasn't for those people, I would have never got to do what I wanted to do, and that's ride bulls for a living.
And that's your fan base. Your diehard fan base is the people that show up and come to the event because they want to come see it live. I mean,
exactly, and they want to see something good. They want to see something fun. They don't want to see 25, 50 guys get on and just get slammed and annihilated. Right. And people say to me sometimes, well, some of the bulls, you didn't use this bull or that bull, why don't you use this bull or that bull? Well, if they're unrideable, or if they have a bucking pattern or style that we as quote experts or knowledgeable people say, well, a nice way of saying he's an eliminator, or he's a piece of junk,
or
he's a lot of not very nice names and descriptions for bulls that just aren't very rider friendly, user friendly. But even in saying that, you put some of those bulls in there that are so bad and treacherous, and more times than not, when you do ride them, they're not impressive to watch when they do ride them. And so you take a bull that bucks everybody off 2 or 3 jumps, and the judge is marking 24, 25, the highest they ever mark any bulls, and then you get somebody like Sage Kimsey who gets on him and rides him through all that, and it's just not exciting to watch. And he's going to be he's not going to be 90, 92, 95 points. He's probably going to be in the lower 80s, because it's, again, the judges, it's subjective, and it's an opinion, but they're just not going to get the high scores. And the bulls that I produce events the same today as I did when I first started, because when I first started, I was still riding, and I'm not going to put bulls in there that I wouldn't want to get on, And now that I don't ride, I still do it the same way, because I think that's the most important thing that I do, and I think that's the best thing I do for the guys, is I treat the bull riding part of it as if I was competing that night. And if I wouldn't want to get on this bull, and I don't like his style of bucking, his pattern, if I think he's an eliminator, if I think he's dangerous, I think he's a piece of whatever you want to call that, then I just don't use him. And it's, that's to me, that's what's most important.
And we have this discussion a lot on the show with the different fans and things that comment and chime in, is It's about the bull riding events themselves. And what we find out a lot of times is when these guys go to a bull riding, they want to watch a bull riding. They don't want to watch a bull getting on. They want to watch a bull riding. They don't want to go see 30 guys get slammed in 2 seconds. They want to see somebody make a good ride. And that's what they want. Like what you're doing is where fans can go out and they can watch a bull ride. They can see a great rider and a great bull, and they can see an 8-second bull ride and see guys cover and see a good event.
And you can do that, and it's still it doesn't take away, doesn't compromise the competition. You know, I've heard, you know, some of the so-called experts, they say, well, you know, if you don't use the baddest bulls or this and that, then the best guy is not going to win, and that's untrue. You know, it's funny, even when we first started, you know, doing these bull competitions. So you think, well, you know, so and so is the best bull. Say you go back to the days of Red Wolf, or, you know, Promised Land, or, you know, Mudslinger, Dillinger, all these great bulls. You think, well, if you have a competition, well, that bull's going to win every time because he's the best bull. Well, he's not going to win every time. It's like saying, you know, Jim Sharp, Donnie Gay, you know, J.B. Mooney, you know, Chris Shivers, you know, they're going to win every event because they're the best bull rider. Well, no, they're not, because that's just not the way it goes. You know, on any given night, you know, any of these guys can win, but, you know, over a period of time, you know, the guys that are the best, the guys that are the, you know, most consistent, who do things correct, who, you know, put out the effort and energy every day, every time, you know, they're going to win more than the other guys. You know, whether that's J.W. Harris or, you know, whoever that is, and that's, you know, that's the thrill of it. That's the fun of it. You know, you know, the sports cliche. That's why they play the game, because you don't know.
There's no guarantee. There's no guarantee.
There is not.
Just because he's entered up, he's not going to win. He may not win.
You know, it's, you know, Donnie Gay, you know, say about, you know, the bull doesn't care who you are. He doesn't read that you're the 3-time world champion. You know, and the minute if you ever take that approach, that you think, you know, every time I start having very much, you know, too much confidence or much confidence at all, you think, oh, I've drawn this one or that one, and it's going to be a night off. I've ridden him before, or he's just nice. He's just that. You know, the first thing that happened when I was getting drilled about the second or third jump, because, you know, I underestimated him, or just, you know, you just can't, you know, you have to show up and, you know, go for it every night, and that's the fun, and that's the thrill of the sport.
Yeah. And with the guys you got coming up, you know, some of the folks may not know about, you know, the event coming up Saturday is Trey Benton won the junior event and the bull riding.
Yeah,
before.
and that's to me, that's, and, you know, being the 26th year, and people say, well, how long are you going to do this? And, you know, even every time I would always think about, well, do I want to do this next year or 5 years down the road? You know, every time I think about that, I think of the junior event that we've had since, you know, since day one. And you have these kids that come up, and I mean, I've had kids that are, you know, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old. You know, I'm gonna ride here one day. I'm gonna ride here in the junior steer riding. And if I don't do this event next year, one of those kids that I'll see this year that says I'm going to be here next year, and then they would in fact qualify to ride, and then I don't have it, I'm not going to feel very good about it. You know, it's pretty hard, you know, when you to look at a kid and take something away from them that they've really earned. You know, I mean, they work hard. I mean, I invite the top, you know, junior kids, just like we do, you know, the regular bull riding. Yeah. And, you know, it's something that they look forward to, and we treat them just like you know, the regular bull riding, you know, we put up a couple $1,000, you know, 2,500, and we always call it scholarship money. You know, if that's what they want to use for. But they all get, you know, they all get a resist all hat. They all get a Rustock panhandle shirt. They all get a pair of cinch jeans. They get if they win, you know, the winner gets a Lucchese, pair of Lucchese boots, but they get $1,000. But they get to compete, you know. They get to look over and see Trey Benton. Well, that's who they saw on television at the national finals. Well, it wasn't that long ago. Trey Benton was one of those kids.
Yeah,
and that's pretty cool. That's very cool.
and that's what it's all about. Because you got the kids out there that see these guys, and that's where they want to be. And they
Well,
wanna come
that's
to
you know
events.
the sport. You know, for it to continue, you still have to. You know, those kids have to have places and opportunities. You know, something to work towards, to look forward to. Is that I'm going to go practice so I can get good enough so I can go ride in Fort Worth one day. And that's, you know, that's, to me, there's nothing funner than cooler than when I walk up and I shake these guys' hands. You can tell that this is the highlight of their rodeo career at this point in their life. You know, 12 years old, and they're getting to ride under the bright lights, Fort Worth, Texas, in Cowtown, standing next to, again, a guy like Trey Benton, who was in the exact same pair of boots that they are, and that's fun.
Who are some of the guys? Who are some of the guys that are going to be there Saturday? What does the lineup look like?
Well, you got guys like, you know, Trey Benton. You know, unfortunately, because of the scheduling, Sage, you know, he is at the Dodge Finals in Florida. And that's the thing that I dislike about, you know, bull riding rodeos, is that there's always so many and so much going on. You're always going to have some conflicts, and I'm always very aware of trying to schedule where guys don't have to miss I don't want them to miss my event, and I don't want them to miss that event, and so guys always have to make a choice sometimes. So, you know, Sage won't be here, and the reigning champ won't be here either, which is Joe Frost. But that doesn't diminish when you look at the list of guys. Again, just because it's like when we were in Vegas the other day, you know, Sage was there. He got bucked off his first one, and so you know you got like Cody Jesus, who young kid from, you know, the Navajo Nation, and you know, last year he had never been on an airplane before. You know, he wound up coming to. I actually got him a ticket and showed him how to get on an airplane and fly to a couple of events. He ended up going to Cheyenne, winning the finals up there, and won a ton of money. And he wound up winning an event. You know, he's a phenomenal talent. You know, guys like he'll be there. You know, Cody Rostocki from right down the road, down around Waco, he'll be there. I think we got 21 some odd NFR guys, and
I guess you got Mike Lee. Mike Lee coming this year.
World champions. Yeah. Mike Lee's coming. You know, we've got world champions, and we've got some. You know, we've got a couple kids. One kid that just turned 18. You know, a little over a month ago, and you know, he won everything there was in junior rodeos in high school, and you know, I invited him to Las Vegas the first week of, to El Paso was his first event. Gets on his first bull, and he's 90 points. His name's Cole Skinder. I mean, how cool is that? Go to your first event and be 90. First event I went to, I think I got slammed. So, but he got welcomed. The next round in the semifinals, he did get slammed. But to show up but I'm always looking. You know, I'm always looking for young guys like that to give them an opportunity to say, hey, you've proven that you could dominate at every level, that you've been at. Like I said, junior rodeos, high school rodeos, and now it's time to see whether you can make it against these guys. And that's where it all starts.
That's it. See what they got.
Bull riding. When you're 28, you're just on the verge of being a dinosaur.
Yeah.
It's just a sport of youth, and the way the bulls are now, guys are going to have shorter careers than say guys in my era, because I rode professionally for 15 years, and if I would have been riding now, I think I would have been lucky to ride for 10, and it's not like the bulls now, every time you get on one, he's a bucker.
Yeah.
And that just wasn't the case whenever I was riding. Not to say, the best bulls when I was riding, you look at them, Cowtown, Pacific Bell, Bodacious, Red Wolf, all of those bulls, they bucked every bit as hard as the best bull there is, the world champion bull from last year and the year before.
Right.
But now they're all
the same.
They're all buckers.
Yeah,
You don't show up and get on a bull. Never again will you show up to one of my events in Fort Worth and hear a 62.
Yeah.
Just doesn't happen.
Yeah. You're not gonna get on jump kickers and go out there about halfway ring and turn around one time.
That's all in the past, because there's so many great bulls now.
That's what it is. What we're going to do, we're going to take a break right quick. We're going to take a break. We're going to throw down our featured artist, Chance Ray. He's going to be singing this Saturday night at the White Elephant. So if you're out there in Cowtown at the bull riding, after the bull riding, sneak on over to the White Elephant. Check out some Chance Ray. We're going to throw a tune down from him, and then we'll be back right after that.
Dinner at the station, let that train roll on by. Couldn't find the words, so I left her hanging high and dry. Oh my, let that train roll on by. Let that train roll on by. Let that train roll on by. I'm still the same old me. Let that train roll on by. Should've let her know. Instead I let what we had wilt and die. Oh my. Let that train roll on by. Let that train roll on by. Let that train roll on by. I'll pick up the pieces, try and get it right next time. I'll tear myself down and try and understand just why. Oh my. Let that train roll on by. Let that train roll on by. Let that train roll on by. I let that train roll on by. I let that train roll on by. I let that train roll on by.
All right. What is going on? We're talking about stuff. Talking about bull riding. Hope you guys enjoying what is going on. We got the man, the myth, the legend, Tuff Hedeman here talking about stuff with us. So, Fort Worth, Texas, you want to be out there, you're going to be seeing what's going on with that, and it's good stuff. So you want to be out there. It's a good bull riding. It's a good bull ride. I've been out there a few times, and it's going to be the best bull riding you go to all year. And that's just a fact. That's just a fact of it. That's the way it goes. And so you want to be there. But I don't know, with the bull riding, when you think back, a lot of people make fun of me because I'm old, and I always say back in the 90s, like it's 10 years ago. Back in the 90s,
It was 10 years ago.
I think it was like 10 years ago, but it's like almost 20 years ago.
Yeah.
But
That doesn't seem possible, does it?
it doesn't. And and then back then, there was a lot of bull riding pens. I was still riding a little bit, and I was fighting a lot of bulls, doing a lot of bullfights and things. And back then, you had pens everywhere you went to, and you'd have kids show up, guys show up. You'd pay $10 or $20 and get on as many bulls as you wanted to. You could ride for hours. And then what I see now on the internet all the time is all these practice pens. They're wanting to pay guys to come out and get on, and nobody wants to go get on bulls anymore. And I don't know what's changed over the years, or
Well, I say this, and I don't want to be one of them old guys that talk about how great and how tough we were back in our day and our generation, and how soft and no good these guys are. There's a lot of kids out there that can ride and really want to ride, but what I see a lot, and I saw it, even when I was competing and even coming up. There's a lot of guys that love everything about bull riding, except bull riding. They like they like everything that comes with it. The traveling, going fun places, cool places. Getting to go ride, say at the Reliance Center in Houston, or Cheyenne, or Salinas, California. Places that you hear about when you're growing up, and to get to go, and you get to go a lot of cool places, meet cool people, and all of that kind of is surrounds the sport. But again, I see quite a few of them that they like everything about bull riding except riding, and for me that's what it was all about. It was for it's getting on and riding, and the challenge of making the whistle, and the just the rush of adrenaline, every time the chute gate opens. People that have never done it, you can't explain to them what it feels like, but it's a rush of adrenaline. It's the same feeling. I mean, I got on my first calf when I was 4 years old, and I got on my last bull when I was 35, and it was the exact same feeling when I was 4 than when I was 35. When the gate opens, it's just explosion, just rush that, there was nothing cooler than that. And, riding for me, it was just the most challenging, the coolest, funnest thing I could ever imagine. And, I never got tired of it. I'm thinking back that I rode as long as I did. Makes no sense, but I just I still loved it. I still wanted to do it, and I did it. Until Dr. Freeman said, "Hey, if you have that same injury again, one level up, then you're going to be dead or Christopher Reeve, so you might ought to consider doing something different. And I said, enough said. And that was it. But, again, you talk about a lot has changed. But, I think one thing that's hard for kids now is that if you go to say, oh, I'm going to go get on some bulls, because when we started, you want to go get on some bulls, you give them $5-10, you get on, and you weren't getting on the caliber of bulls that they have now. And so now, I think, unfortunately, guys, some not all guys, but there's some guys that they just want somebody to get on their bulls, and more times than not, you get a young guy getting on a bull that they shouldn't be on.
Right.
And, they just wipe them out and annihilate them. And before they ever get a chance to even experience what bull riding's about, and you can't learn how to ride bulls if you're getting drilled, the first jump. If you're getting on a bull that, you have no chance to ride more than 1 or 2, 3 jumps, well then, you're wasting your time. And I think a lot of them just get killed off before even kids that have talent that want to ride, a lot of times they get mucked out, and before they ever have a chance to really develop and mature as a rider.
Yeah, because thinking back on, I remember getting on jump kickers and making laps around the arena. I think just going around and around and around and around. But that's what it took, because when you got on that jump kicker and you rode that sucker all the way to the other arena and back, it just the confidence.
Well,
that
you get the feeling of what it feels like to stay on it. When what bull riding is, it's really no different than any other sport. There's a reason you stay on and a reason you don't stay on, and it's very, there are basics, there's fundamentals that you have to do. There's about 4 things that you have to do to have a chance to make the whistle. And why Sage Kimsey has dominated the way he has the last few years, because fundamentally he just does everything correctly. His body works in sync to be able to react to whatever this bull's going to do. He can turn back to the left, he can turn back to the right, he can jump, he can back up, he can move forward. But he's always, he always has a good grip with his legs and feet, always has his upper body and his free arm in a position to just react and move wherever that bull is. And that's really what bull riding is. It's a trained reaction. Your body, it just reacts to that movement, and the only way you get to that point, that level, is by lots and lots of practice.
Yeah, you just got to do it, because over time it's just like you don't think about it. It's like a muscle. It's like muscle memory.
Exactly.
It comes automatic over time.
You want to learn how to ride bulls? You ride bulls. I always hear people going to the gym, and I don't. Going to the gym doesn't have a damn thing to do with making a whistle. I don't. I think you have to be in decent shape, but I always say you need to be in riding shape. The only way you get in riding shape is by riding. Push-ups or sit-ups, again, doesn't have anything to do with making the whistle.
Right.
It just doesn't. And I say, well, it's 8 seconds. How good a shape do you really have to be in? I mean, you can't be overweight, but you have to be able to. You just have to be flexible and be able to react.
Mm-hmm.
And, it's not rocket science, but you want to be a bull rider, you got to get on.
Yeah. Back if we go back in the day, back when you're riding, what was a place or an event, a destination that you went to go ride that you're like, man, this is the best place to go ride?
Well, for me, I grew up in El Paso and there was an arena on the east side of town that once a week we could go practice riding bulls. And there was a guy named Tim Webb, super nice guy. He's still around today, even when I have my event out there. He actually comes and judges. But you could go get on bulls that were at the level that you'd have a chance to stay on. But I mean, you had to learn how to do things correctly. And I started riding calves, steers, and the older you get, the bigger the animal gets. And by the time you're 16 years old, you're getting on regular sized bulls, but you're not getting on NFR caliber bulls. You just have to get on bulls that you can have a chance, so you can learn, so you can challenge yourself. But the key is, getting on. I mean, whenever I was in college, there were ranchers there that, they'd bring in to the college. They'd just bring, trailer load of bulls, and we'd just get on them. And Mac Altizer, that's right after it started Bad Company Rodeo, and I was lucky that he was out there, so we would get on and ride a lot. But I would get on, 4, 5, 6, 7 bulls a day, because I just wasn't any good. I mean, I sucked. I mean, and I'd been riding ever since I was a kid, but it just took me a long time to. I knew what I wanted to do. I knew the basics of what I was trying to accomplish, but it just, for me, it just took a lot of just trial and error and just getting on, getting drilled, getting on, and I was too. I mean, many times people look at me and say, maybe you ought to try something else, and I was too hard-headed and too stubborn to quit, and that's all I ever really wanted to do. And when I started having some success, wow, that was nothing funner than that.
Yeah. Now,
I mean, I liked riding bulls when I couldn't.
But with same for the kids, we got a lot of kids that watch and a lot of kids that do stuff. For these kids that are coming up and that's what they want to do, they see your event in Fort Worth, and that's what they want to do. They want to make it to that event. They want to get there, and in their training, what advice would you have for them?
The most important thing is to go to a clinic or a school where you can, at least get an idea of what it's about. The equipment, spurs, rope. How to put your rope on. The shoot procedure. And the basics and fundamentals of what you're trying to tell your body to do, teach your body to do, in terms of, as you said, muscle memory, and teaching your body how to react, and finding a good place where you can go and do that, where you're not getting on a bull that you have zero chance of riding more than 1 or 2 jumps. I think that the riding a barrel. Terry Holland came up with the Mighty Bucky and this and that, to where you can do some exercises and kind of get a simulation of how bull bucks and what you're trying to do. Any and all of that kind of thing. But the most important thing is riding, and knowing what you're trying to accomplish, and not getting on something that you just don't belong. You don't have a chance. You don't have a chance to ride, and the more you get on something like that, bull riding is dangerous as hell as it is. So you don't take unnecessary chance, especially when you're trying to learn, and that just comes from making sure you're not. And it's always good to surround yourself with guys that have similar desires that they want. I was lucky. I grew up, there was a handful of us. We all wanted to ride, and hanging around with guys that wanted to do the same thing, that wanted to be good and do good, and do the right thing.
Now, over the years with the safety, safeties came into it, and we got the bull power now. And you got the safety, you got the vest that came out, and you got the helmets. What do you think about, with the bull riding what it is today, and with the ability to have the helmets and the vest? What do you think about that? Do you think that more of the guys should be more safe?
I think you should always wear a vest. I think you should always wear a helmet. When I was riding, I had the best doctors, Dr. Freeman, Dr. Evans, guys like that. But I didn't wear a helmet, but I had issues with my neck, and at that time they didn't have a helmet that was specifically developed for bull riding, and they didn't want me to wear a helmet because the helmets they had were probably too heavy, and they didn't want to put more weight, which added more stress to my neck and spine. But, and especially when you grow up doing something, it's hard to go. I don't know that I've ever seen anybody that went from, guys my age or in my era generation that never wore a helmet, and then all of a sudden they started wearing a helmet. It didn't seem like they could ever figure it out.
Right.
I mean, it's just a distraction because you're just not used to it.
Yeah.
But when you're growing, the equipment now, the vests out there, the helmets out there, you should always have both because, it's dangerous and you should always protect yourself as much as you can, but mindful that it's a dangerous sport and it's not safe and it's not going to be safe. There's nothing you can do to make it safe. It's just the nature of you're getting on a 1,500-pound bull.
That's it. And that's what I tell them. People ask me all the time. So, in the time back, you didn't think about that. You didn't come up that way. But I tell them, if I was looking back at myself and in today's times, because with the way bull riding is, with the money out there, the things going on, you want to protect yourself the best you can because you need to be able to compete at the next event. Because if you're not competing at the next event, you're hurt.
Doesn't matter how good you are. If you're hurt, you're not going to be able to.
Yeah.
And that's another thing. It might be noble to go ahead and ride when you've got a broken bone or you're hurt, and know that there's a difference between being hurt. If I've got some bruises here and there, well, that hurts. But if I've got, the muscle torn off my bicep or a broken bone, I'm hurt. I'm injured. I'm not hurt. I'm injured.
Yeah.
So know that there's a difference. And if you're injured, like I said, it might, make you a tough guy, whatever. But it doesn't make any sense to get on with something broken.
Yeah.
Because you're not going to be competitive anyway.
No.
You are going to get hurt worse. And so, just understand and know that, don't get on. If you're not healthy enough to make the whistle, getting on and getting drilled 2 or 3 jumps.
It's not gonna help anything.
No, it helps. No, you're gonna hurt yourself worse, and it's gonna be longer before you're gonna be healthy to be competitive.
Yeah, that's it.
At the end of the day, you'll be broke.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh man. Well, I tell you what, we're almost up on the hour. So, you got anything you want to throw out to the folks about this weekend coming out? To
No,
the event,
we just have a Fort Worth Cowtown Coliseum. It's a great venue, not a bad seat. You can go to Ticketmaster and get tickets, and it's a good time. It's a fun time. There's not a better place to watch an event than Cowtown Coliseum, and you can do anything Saturday night. Come see us.
That's it.
You can like us on Facebook, and they give away some tickets, and same thing on Instagram, and win a few tickets. Actually, give away some merchandise and some other things as well. So.
We'll do that. So
Thanks for having me. I appreciate it. So you guys do a great job. Keep it up.
Thank you.
We'll do it. And with that, everything else going on, see you there. Everything else, go to pepperstewart.com. Look around. Check it out. While you're there, buy a T-shirt.